Now, you mentioned tonight, you talked about as the world becomes more Latin, more Asian, more African, and I think we could even say as those countries become more Christian than even we are. Talk about that a little bit more. I think we're still I still think we're in the dark about realizing that the Western world is declining where other worlds are.
Well, isn't that the point? We don't know what that's going to look like yet. We don't know what the shape of the church is going to be in some of those places. And I guess what I would want to beg for is that we not be imperialist. That we not have the arrogance of the Gentiles who say it's our way, our gospel, and that's the only way. That we're going to be open to different expressions of the ecclesia as they emerge from different parts of the world. And I don't think we know what that's going to look like yet. At least I don't.
Well, I think you've set us on the right course by talking about us being the proper response being thankful, and the proper response being to share. And from what you just said, it's a response of humility too, where we're going to learn from. You used the Anglican Church, but maybe we haven't yet crossed this bridge. Well, here's
my colleague here, Richard Beck, uses the term moral luck a lot, which basically has to do with. I was pretty lucky. I get born to Christian parents in a place where Jesus as Messiah was taught and believed. And if I'd been born in the middle of some other place with a different set of influences, it could have been a really different story. And surely the response to that ought to be not arrogance, but just gratitude that God found me. And we should want him to find a whole bunch of other people too. We got to change some moral luck here.
Western Americans are pretty tunnel vision, and we don't even realize it. We do not realize it.
But I take some assurance from this text because it seems to me that we got good company there. Jews and Gentiles are having a very hard time seeing the world from anything other than their perspective. And what God is doing, it seems to me in this text, is inviting them both to have a much bigger picture of what's going on. It's not just Jewish salvation. It's not just Gentile salvation. It's God trying to do this mission where everyone comes to recognize Jesus Messiah.
Joel from Vancouver, Washington asks this question. What's the most practical contemporary context where we can begin to enact this kind of thinking?
Probably. What was the question again?
What's the most practical contemporary context where we can begin to enact this theology? I had a hunch you were going to say wherever you are.
Yeah. That just seems so trite. So I'm glad you said that part.
Trite, brown, hairy. That's me.
No, I do think. Again, I live in the middle of nowhere, Texas, but I'm in a very diverse community, and there are a lot of opportunities to enact a thankful sharing of the gospel. And I've got to believe that's true of almost any place anybody would live. I mean, you really have to, you really do have to live pretty far back in the sticks not to have anybody but people just like you. And so I do think, this is hard because the people around me don't do it, say it exactly the same way I do. I have to do it every day with 18 to 22-year-olds who don't sing what I want to sing, in the manner I want them to sing it. And okay, am I going to be an imperialist, or am I going to share? And so it's not just a matter of ethnicity, it's a matter of all sorts of other things, it seems to me as well.
Eric Gentry from Dallas, Texas asked this question. He says, does this make ecclesiology, which is the nature of the church, does it make ecclesiology obsolete, other than the assertion that the church just needs to get out there?
Tough question. From one of my students who, while holding on to the hope of heaven, has apparently given up the hope of graduation. I'm just kidding, Eric. No. The notion of ecclesiology is not obsolete. But what I do think, where it seems to me the question is headed, is we have got to think about what it means to be the scattered church. The notion of the church only as the gathered church is, in my opinion, dangerously obsolete. The battle that is going to be fought is almost certainly going to be fought everywhere but the church buildings. It's going to be fought in the bars and on the streets and in the laundromats, almost everywhere but the church buildings. So if that's where the question is going, it is time for the church to leave the building and become the scattered church. That's got to happen. And I do think the other notion is obsolete.
Definitely. I mean, in some respects, what you've just said ties in great with this text because of the pulling together Jews and Gentile and how it's offered in worship. It's a great missioning commission for us for tonight.
And I do think if I had a chance to preach this sermon again, this is an interesting situation where you think about the stuff you wish you had said, and then you get to say it. I don't think I said as strongly as I wanted to push this notion about the mystery of God. This is always going to be bigger than we are. We're always going to be outside of our competency and our understanding. And I would love for us to kind of get comfortable with that, because we are control freaks. We've got to understand it all. We've got to control it all. We've got to, we've got to have I'm not against strategic plans, just as long as you don't stick to it. And I mean that. I like plans, but you have to be open to the mysterious and surprising movements of God in the world. And is that ethnic Israel or spiritual Israel? How is it that God's going to gather all Israel together? Mysterion. That's a mystery to me, but praise be to God who pulls it off somehow.
Well said. Would you thank Randy for